Hello guys, I'm Firefly and welcome to the video where I lay out the strengths and weaknesses of every single gun in World War III and rank them according to how much each of them is worth using. This video takes the form of a tier list because originally I just wanted to do a tier list, but as I've said before, I love making videos that's dense and useful, so I tried to pack as much information into the video as possible, and I ended up creating a video that can easily serve as a great guide to the game's entire arsenal and comes with some useful tips about loadout building, gunplay tactics, and other random things as well. This is an informative video to help you make better decisions on which guns to focus on and which guns to spend your precious time maxing out if you want to do well in game. Before we get into the rankings, I actually want to talk about two stats: rate of fire and mobility. Rate of fire is a very important stat, which is partly why I bothered to get exact numbers for it. What you're seeing on screen is something that I put together recently. The data is from my own testing and it does inform a lot of what I'm about to say. Rate of fire is important because it's one of only two things that defines a weapon's time to kill. The other thing is the damage profile of the bullet. However, in World War III, weapons that share the same ammo type also share the same damage profile as long as they're also using the same barrel attachment. Which means if two weapons have the same ammo and barrel, whichever one that has a faster rate of fire will also have a shorter time to kill at all distances and in all situations across the board. And as you may have noticed, most weapons in World War III share ammo with multiple other weapons. So that's rate of fire, but there's also some very important things that you should know about mobility. In my World War III loadout and customization guide, I said that mobility only affects movement speed, and tactical sprint duration, and thus making it not that big of a deal, and I was wrong. The World War III developer who actually works on the weapons actually revealed that mobility affects almost everything that has an animation, including vaulting, climbing, reloading, and probably more things that I'm not aware of myself, but most crucially, it affects aiming down sights. According to him, medium mobility is the baseline, high mobility does everything 10% faster, and low mobility does everything 10% slower. I immediately tested this myself in game using the easiest method I could think of. I built the weapon with the slowest possible ADS time that fits into 6 weight slots, and I tried aiming down sights with it in a low mobility loadout versus a high mobility loadout, and the difference was immediately noticeable. I did not have to record the footage and count frames in the video editor in order to find the difference like I did to get the rates of fire. With this, the difference was right there. So this is kind of a huge deal. Fast vaulting and climbing are nice to have. Fast reloading can benefit some weapons like the RPG, LMGs, or anything that likes to run out of ammo, but it's overall still not super important in most cases. ADS time, however, is a big deal on a lot of weapons. If going from low mobility to high mobility yields roughly 20% difference in ADS time, like the developer said, then that is the same difference you feel when you finally unlock the AMPEC 15 laser attachment and put it on your gun, which I know from experience many times over is a noticeable difference on most guns, and you probably do too because everyone runs the AMPEC 15 laser. So mobility is quite important, which is why the number of weight slots a weapon takes up will affect how good of a weapon it is. So let's get started. We're going to start with the assault rifles because they are the most versatile and most popular, and I'll be comparing other weapons to them later in the video, so it makes sense to start here. Let's start with the 5.56 ARs because they're slightly more popular than the 7.62s, whether or not they are actually better. The first thing you should know about the 5.56 ARs is that they all have pretty much the same rate of fire, except for the M416, which fires much slower. The G36, M4 MWS, and MSBS-K shoot at 750, 740, and 720 RPM respectively. They're all within 5% of each other, and the only anomaly is the M416, which is 10% slower than all of them at 660 RPM. Since all 4 weapons also use the same ammo, this means they have pretty much the same time to kill as discussed earlier, except the M416, which kills much slower. Starting with the MSBS-K, I'm gonna say that this is a B tier weapon. If you watched my video about the top 3 beginner weapons, it might surprise you that I don't rank this higher considering how I talked about it there. It's a great weapon for how early on in the game you get it. However, when we're looking at the game's entire arsenal as a whole, there's just so much more room for guns to be better, and I don't think the MSBS-K is quite good enough to contend with the best. It's noticeably more accurate than the G36 and M4 MWS while maintaining essentially the same time to kill, but it takes up 5 weight slots instead of 4 and has a 3-round burst firing mode instead of a semi-auto mode, which in my experience is inferior to the semi-auto mode on the other 5.56 rifles because it just doesn't give you the same precision, and the burst delay can also cause a lot of inconsistency in the time to kill depending on the situation. Next up is the G36, which I'm gonna rank even lower at C tier. The G36 is usable, but purely in terms of performance, it's kind of a pointless weapon. The only tiny thing it has going for it is that it's technically the fastest firing AR at 750 RPM, but like I said earlier, that's within 5% of the MSBS-K and M4 MWS, and the G36 has bigger drawbacks in terms of accuracy. The G36 is very inaccurate. It has this high, fast oscillating, and inconsistent recoil to a point where it noticeably limits its effective range. And neither does it have unusually fast handling to make it meaningfully better at close range, and also no special features or attachments that makes it good for something else. As far as I can tell, the player base agrees that this weapon is not so great. You very rarely see people use this weapon. The M4 MWS is better from basically every angle, it just unlocks much later. If you need a 4-slot weapon that unlocks sooner, the Beryl 7.62 is also great. I would advise against investing too much time in the G36 until it gets buffed, which I'm pretty sure it will be at some point, and I'll let you guys know in my pinned comment down below if it does. Next is the M416, and I'm going to put this one in the B tier. Now, I know that this is an S tier weapon in a lot of people's eyes, but I think it's at least slightly overrated. Its selling point is accuracy, it has very low recoil, and even a fast muzzle velocity, which makes it very easy to use and consistent. The thing is, even if you hit all your shots, 5.56 at 660 RPM is relatively low firepower for this game, so the ceiling of this weapon's potential is quite low even if you master it. The gun is also 6 weight slots, which means if you also equip full armor, you will get pushed into low mobility, which means in total, you will have slow player movement and weapon handling combined with an already slow time to kill. Overall, I feel very passive when I use this weapon, and whenever I challenge an enemy that knows where I am, especially at close range where the M416's accuracy yields the smallest benefit, I have a lot less confidence than I would with other weapons. Accuracy does go a long way, especially at long ranges, but it doesn't go all the way all the time. There will be gunfights where you hit 100% of your shots and still lose to somebody who only hit most of their shots but were using a more powerful weapon. Last in the 5.56 family, but not least, we have the M4 MWS, and I'm going to put this in the S tier. I think the M4 MWS is excellent, and if you only want to grind out one member of the 5.56 family, I recommend this one. It's only 4 weight slots just like the G36, but it's more accurate. It also has an integrated suppressor barrel, which makes it very quiet and increases your ADS strafe speed. It's a high level unlock, but if you ever get there, I highly recommend building a close range ninja loadout with the M4 MWS using the barrel. It should be a lot of fun on top of being very effective. The M416 also has an SD barrel, but SD barrels inherit their stats from compact barrels, and I would not recommend building a close range loadout around the M416 since it's heavy, slow, and derives most of its value from accuracy, which is less useful up close. Moving on to the 7.62x39 assault rifles, compared to their 5.56 counterparts, 7.62x39 ARs do more damage per shot at the cost of shooting slower. The Beryl, AK-15, and Alpha each shoot at 600, 620, and 570 RPM respectively in full auto. All of them shoot slower than any 5.56 weapon, but each 7.62x39 bullet also does higher damage. The higher damage per shot also means that 7.62x39 weapons consume ammo much slower than 5.56. They have the same 30 round mags, but each round in the mag does higher damage, so assuming the same accuracy, on average it'll take a smaller portion of each mag to kill an enemy, which means you can get more kills before having to reload. If these ARs deploy with the same amount of reserve ammo as 5.56 ARs, then your ammo reserve will also be able to last longer, making it easier to run equipment pack or med pack in place of the ammo pack. The 7.62x39 family also has access to the 75 round drum mag, whereas the 5.56 family only has the 50 round drum mag. The 75 round mag increases ADS time by very slightly more, but in exchange offers way more damage per magazine because it provides not only more bullets, but also better bullets. The Beryl 7.62 is the first 7.62x39 AR that you unlock, and I'm going to put it in the A tier. The Beryl is a great weapon. At 4 weight slots, it competes most closely with the M4 MWS. Its close range time to kill is not nearly as good as the M4, but it has a longer effective range thanks to not having the M4's fast oscillating horizontal recoil. It also has all the ammo supply benefits of 7.62x39 over 5.56 that I just talked about. The AK-15 I like even more. I'm putting this in the S tier alongside the M4 MWS. It fires 7.62x39 at 620 RPM and also has lower recoil than the Beryl, giving it better firepower and accuracy. It does, however, take up 5 weight slots instead of 4, but it's otherwise an all-around upgrade as far as I can tell. In my experience, 7.62x39 at 620 RPM combined with its moderate accuracy makes it very competitive against other meta weapons at all but very long ranges, and 5 weight slots can be equipped alongside full armor while still maintaining medium mobility. I think this is the best AR you can get for 5 slots, just like the M4 is the best you can get for 4 slots. Now onto the Alpha, and this is very interesting. In full auto mode, the Alpha fires 7.62x39 at 570 RPM with accuracy comparable to the AK-15. The rate of fire is slightly slower than both the Beryl and the AK-15, and it also takes up 6 weight slots. So like the M416, it cannot be used alongside full armor and still retain medium mobility. These are all downsides, but in exchange the Alpha offers 2 upsides that you literally won't find anywhere else. The first one is that it uses armor-piercing rounds for its primary ammo supply. This feature is completely unique to the Alpha. Every other weapon that has access to more than one ammo type use FMJ for their main ammo reserve. If you equip HP or AP in the secondary ammo attachment slot, you will only get 1 magazine of HP or AP rounds that you can swap to, which is basically useless. If you want to learn the intricacies about weapon attachments, you can check out my World War III loadout and customization guide using the card in the top right corner of the screen and skip to the secondary ammo section. But the point is that what the Alpha comes with is not the same thing as what you get when you simply equip the AP secondary ammo on another weapon. The Alpha comes with a full reserve of AP rounds, whereas the attachments will only give you 1 mag. According to the in-game menu, AP rounds are supposed to be a pure upgrade over FMJ, retaining the same damage profile but possessing a higher armor penetration value. Unfortunately, I don't know exactly how much of a difference this makes because I don't have the exact numbers for the penetration values or the absorption values of all the armor types. Speaking from my experience though, I don't clearly notice the Alpha frequently killing enemies in fewer shots than the AK-15 or Beryl, but I also cannot rule out that it's helped me win gunfights that I would otherwise have lost in ways that are too subtle for me to notice. The second unique feature of the Alpha is what really sets it apart. The Alpha is the only gun with the alternate fire mode that allows it to fire an extremely fast 2-round hyperburst. The 2 rounds within the burst come out so close together that they're essentially one super bullet. In real life, there's a gun called the AN-94 that does this. Now, the Alpha's hyperburst in-game is not just a cool gimmick, it's actually extremely powerful. You get the same massively reduced recoil as you do with the semi-auto firing mode on other ARs, but it's way easier to aim because it places less stress on your trigger finger, which is important for precise shots. Also, even though the Alpha's average rate of fire in the hyperburst mode is about the same as the AK or Beryl in semi-auto, because it has a proportionately long delay between trigger pulls, it could still yield a better time to kill because the first trigger pull, which is not subject to any delay, unleashes 2 bullets instead of 1, which makes it twice the damage. If this raises more questions than it answers, feel free to subscribe to the channel so you can hear me elaborate when I eventually make a video specifically about the very special Alpha. I won't elaborate any further here since we still have many other guns to cover. I'm going to put the Alpha in the S tier. It's essentially an AK-15 that takes up 1 more weight slot, but in exchange offers the hyperburst mode that makes it much better at long range. I think the Alpha offers a huge amount of value all in one package. In full auto mode, it's a decent close to mid-range weapon. When you flip it over to hyperburst, it's perhaps the best long-range weapon that's not a sniper rifle. Last, we only have one more gun in the assault rifle category, and that is the MSBS-B. I left this one alone to the end because it uses its own ammo type. It's neither 5.56 nor 7.62x39, instead it uses 300 Blackout, which means it has its own damage profile. According to the menus, the MSBS-B is also supposed to be quieter than the other ARs when using a suppressor, although I'm not sure if it can be quieter than the other ARs with an SD barrel attachment, which the MSBS-B itself does not have. I'm going to put the MSBS-B in the B tier. The barrel is also 4 weight slots and it shoots at the same 600 RPM, but uses more powerful ammo. And I also consider the barrel to be more accurate at long ranges than the MSBS-B because it has less horizontal recoil. It's a similar situation as the G36, where it fails to be better at anything compared to its close competitors, but I'm ranking this one tier higher because I don't think it falls quite as far behind as the G36. Also, I have yet to confirm that the supposedly unique stealth capabilities actually exist. I guess it would be easy enough to test with a squad mate on Discord, but I didn't even bother. After all, stealth can only have so much value in a game where squad mates you don't know can spawn on you at any moment, fire off louder weapons, and expose the crap out of you anyways. So that's all the assault rifles, and now I'm going to move on to the Marksman Rifles. I'm going to discuss these before the SMGs and LMGs because the Marksman Rifles perform closer to the ARs than those. They basically are ARs with extremely slow rates of fire and small 20-round mags, but in exchange fires the powerful 7.62x51 rounds that do way more damage per shot. The high single shot damage of the powerful ammo makes them more powerful in semi-auto, which does make them more competitive at long range, but in my experience the Alpha is still better for that. 7.62x51 rounds are also supposed to be less affected by armor, which should make these weapons perform more consistently than ARs across targets with different levels of armor. Let's talk about the Scar H first, because it's the only one that's actually good. The M417 is basically a Scar H but worse, so let's first compare the Scar H to the rest of the arsenal, and then compare the M417 to the Scar H and figure out why it's basically So the Scar H fires 7.62x51 at 525 RPM. In my experience, the time to kill from this combination is, on average, not as fast as ARs like the M4 MWS or AK-15 at close range, but it gets better as the distance stretches out. However, at longer ranges, the gun is also harder to aim because it has higher recoil. The Scar H also takes up 6 weight slots, which again means no full armor if you want to keep medium mobility. Same case as the Alpha or M416. The base ADS time on the Scar H also appears to be either the same or negligibly different from all the assault rifles, despite the Marksman Rifles being branded as a heavier class of weapons. I think if you can survive the weapon's recoil, the increased consistency against different levels of armor can really begin to shine. I certainly enjoy using this weapon even though it's not necessarily my favorite. An AR might have better time to kill against lightly armored enemies, but especially in the case of 5.56, time to kill can really go off the charts if you hit steel armor plates. Even 7.62x51 is still moderately affected by steel armor plates, but to a far lesser extent. I've gotten hits in the center of my torso for 17 damage from 7.62x51, which I don't think is possible without armor. But the immediate next shot did almost twice the damage, which I assume is because it shredded the armor. Next we have the M417, and I'm going to put this in the C tier. The M417 was once considered overpowered, and it has since actually been nerfed multiple times, and by now I very much feel that the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction. It now fires 7.62x51 at only 430 RPM, making it the slowest shooting full auto weapon in the entire game, and by a lot. In my experience, the rate of fire is so slow that in most cases, it has a way slower time to kill than most weapons, despite the high single shot damage of 7.62x51. If you compare the M417 to the Scar H, the M417 offers basically nothing over it. The Scar H fires faster and weighs less, and the only thing that the M417 technically has going for it is lower recoil, but no amount of accuracy can redeem a time to kill that slow. For all I care, the devs could turn off the recoil on the M417, and I still probably won't use it, particularly because the recoil on something like the Scar H is already okay for me. It's funny because the M417 kinda has the same problem as the M416, where it has high accuracy but a slow time to kill. So even if you hit all of your shots, you can still be outgunned by someone else hitting only most of their shots, except that in the case of the M417, the time to kill is much worse. Moving on, let's talk about light machine guns. LMGs in World War III have extremely slow handling, extremely high recoil, and lack the ability to use semi-auto mode. But in exchange, they offer not only huge magazines, but also insane firepower that towers over all the other full auto weapons in the game. The MG5, for example, fires the same 7.62x51 ammo as the Marksman Rifles, but at 720 RPM, which is in the exact same realm as the 5.56 ARs. Let's actually start with the MG5, and I'm going to put it in the B tier. 7.62x51 at 720 RPM makes the MG5 the most powerful weapon in the game. The only weapons that can shoot faster are SMGs, which shoot pistol ammo, not 7.62x51. This thing is excellent to use with a bipod, but if you are to use it without a bipod, there's still a lot of things holding you back. The most obvious one is that you have to wait until tomorrow to aim down sights, even without a bipod. Attachments can help, but even the best possible build is still going to be slow by assault rifle standards. You have to premeditate pretty much all of your engagements, or you're going to get killed over and over while trying to aim down sights. Accuracy is another problem. LMG grade recoil means it's extremely inaccurate during full auto fire without a bipod. And if you need to take precise shots, you also can't work around this by using semi-auto because it doesn't exist. Now, all of these downsides are not unique to the MG5, the UKM and Pecheneg also suffer from them, and with the right tactics it is possible to work around them and still get plenty of value out of that sweet LMG firepower. The reason why I'm not ranking the MG5 any higher than B tier is because of one other downside that is unique to it, and that is the fact that it takes up 8 weight slots. Not only is this extremely heavy in general, but it's also just too much for both the first and second best armor combinations. 8 weight blocks will not fit into the same loadout as steel armor plate plus titanium helmet at all, and even if you drop down to the ceramic plate, you can do it, but you will not be able to maintain medium mobility, which you can do with every weapon that weighs 7 slots or less. Your options are far worse in general when it comes to armor and mobility, which is bad because LMGs benefit greatly from both. You want mobility to counter the slow ADS time, as well as decent armor for when you inevitably catch bullets while trying to aim down sights. The next most powerful LMG after the MG5 is the UKM, which also fires 7.62x51, but at a slower 660 RPM. But this LMG is actually S tier for me. 7.62x51 at 660 RPM in this game is second to nothing but the MG5, since that's as fast as the M416 fires its much weaker 5.56 rounds, so you'll still be outgunning just about anything. In exchange for this very slightly reduced firepower, you get 2 huge benefits in return. The first one is that the UKM is 7 weight slots instead of 8, which means it will fit into a loadout alongside full armor, and you can even drop the body plate down to ceramic and get medium mobility. The second benefit is that it has a unique magazine attachment that improves ADS time, which the other LMGs don't have, which means in total, you can improve the UKM's ADS time by a larger percentage than you could for the other LMGs. The UKM's base ADS time seems to be about the same as the MG5, but when you stack this magazine attachment with the usual Ampeg 15 laser and a compact barrel, aiming down sights becomes fast enough for this weapon to really be an assault rifle that's slightly slower and has high recoil, but in return has much greater firepower. You'll be able to move around, peek corners, and even win fights reactively, but still enjoy the better TTK and better consistency against armor. The high firepower combined with the large 100 round mag also means that you can kill more enemies before having to reload, and also increased opportunities for wallbangs because you have the bullets to spare. The UKM is perhaps my personal favorite weapon in the entire game. I love using it and I perform incredibly well with it. I think this weapon is often overlooked because it's a low level unlock, and it also doesn't look particularly cool or have any special features to make it really stand out. But make no mistake, this plus steel armor plate and titanium helmet is ironically one of the best generic assault loadouts you can build. That is not to say that the actual assault rifles suck. ARs still offer faster handling, higher mobility with the same armor, single fire mode, integrated suppressors, etc. But if I could only have one loadout, I would actually choose this loadout over anything containing an AR. Moving on, there's also a third LMG in the game with even lower firepower than the UKM, and that is the Pecheneg Bullpup, and I'm going to put this in the C tier. The Pecheneg fires 7.62x54R at 550 RPM. The 7.62x54R ammo type is unique to the Pecheneg, and it performs very similar to 7.62x51, which also means that the Pecheneg definitely has overall lower damage output than the UKM, because whatever small difference between the ammo types cannot possibly be enough to make up the difference of 110 RPM, which is 20% between these two weapons, and it's also nothing special in terms of accuracy either. The Pecheneg is supposed to have, quote, exceptional handling for a belt-fed LMG, but it's also missing the special magazine attachment that the UKM has. As far as I can tell, the UKM with the attachment actually aims down sights faster than the Pecheneg. Another benefit that the Pecheneg has over the UKM is that it's 6 weight slots instead of 7, but you can't really do much with this due to where the numbers cut off. As we discussed earlier with the MG5 and WKM, going down from 8 to 7 slots yields the massive benefit of allowing you to wear full armor, as well as second best armor with medium mobility. Going from 7 to 6 slots doesn't really yield any benefits comparable to something like that. You can run a better pistol in a low mobility or medium mobility loadout, which is not very important, and I guess you can run high mobility with minimum armor, but I think that's a terrible idea, especially for an LMG where you're often likely to get shot once or twice while trying to aim down sights. Last, there is one more weapon in the LMG class that's not really an LMG. The SA-80 is a weird weapon. Without the LMG Beryl, it shoots 5.56 rounds at 750 RPM, putting it in the same realm as all the 5.56 ARs that are not the M416. The LMG Beryl attachment increases rate of fire by 10%, bumping it up to 825 RPM. I did test this myself as well, and it does actually shoot at 825 RPM, making it the fastest firing 5.56 weapon and the fastest firing weapon in the game when using that barrel. However, the LMG barrel inherits stats from the Marksman barrel, which slows down ADS, and the barrel attachment actually comes with a bipod, which further slows down ADS. You can remove this bipod to speed up ADS using the backpack, but it still blocks the ability to use a foregrip. I really do think that the value of this gun revolves around the LMG barrel attachment. Not only does it raise the RPM, which has an effect on the time to kill, but it also gives you a marksman barrel and bipod for free, whereas those two attachments would take up one attachment slot each on other weapons. If you remove the LMG barrel attachment, you end up with a weapon that offers nothing over the 5.56 ARs, besides shooting a tiny 10 RPM faster than the G36. If you keep the LMG barrel attachment, this weapon can be good at a couple of things. First of all, it's an excellent bipod weapon. While the MG5 still outclasses the SA-80 in terms of firepower and damage per magazine, the SA-80 is feather light at only 5 weight slots instead of 8. This means you can build a viable bipod loadout with a medium or even high mobility, allowing you to travel much faster between vantage points. You can even wear full armor and still carry the 2-slot Glauberyt or DMG 9mm as a secondary weapon, which is actually not a bad idea because the SA-80 burns through ammo very quickly. You can also remove the bipod from the barrel in-game using the backpack so you can get better ADS time and still keep the 10% faster rate of fire. I'm going to put the SA-80 in the B tier. It can easily feel like a D tier weapon the first time you try it due to the atrociously slow handling in its stock condition. However, it gets better once you learn to remove the bipod using the backpack, and it gets even better once you unlock the Ampeg 15 laser, which unlocks unusually late on this weapon for some reason. I have a feeling that very few people have actually experienced the peak potential of the SA-80 because they stopped the grind before they unlock this critical attachment. I think the optimal way to use the SA-80 is to run the LMG barrel and constantly take the bipod on and off using the backpack depending on the situation, in which case the SA-80 is essentially a less accurate and slower but more powerful assault rifle that has a bipod mode ready to go at all times, which does satisfy a niche, but this niche is really specific and not particularly useful most of the time. Now that we've covered the high caliber full auto weapons, let's move in the other direction and talk about the lower caliber ones like submachine guns. Let's start with the SMGs that take up 3 weight slots, the Vityaz and the Sig. Both of them are excellent weapons, which is why I'm going to put them both in the S tier. You should not underestimate these two weapons. Despite only being 3 slots, they are neck and neck against ARs in terms of time to kill, and they have much better ADS times and hipfire accuracy, making them more powerful than ARs at close range. Their main weakness is body armor, which is a result of their pistol ammo having low penetration. The Vityaz, for example, can do as low as 2 damage when hitting steel armor plates, which could produce a ridiculous number of hit markers. Now, this doesn't mean that you can get 50 hit markers on an enemy with 100 health, because if you keep shooting, the bullets will eventually wear out the armor, so only the first few shots will be fully absorbed, but it's still more than enough time bought for the target to kill you back. If your aim is good enough, you can actually shoot around the body armor plate to consistently get the best time to kill. If you want to learn more about this, you can check out my loadout and customization guide and skip to the section about armor. If you're wondering what the difference between the Vityaz and Sig is, the Vityaz has higher accuracy and the Sig has higher firepower. The Vityaz fires 9x19 Parabellum ammo at 720 RPM. The 720 RPM is comparable to 5.56 ARs, but the ammo is much weaker. However, as discussed earlier, the Vityaz has much faster ADS and sprint to fire times than an AR, as well as exceptionally low recoil, which allows it to stay usable up to a surprisingly long range for an SMG. The low recoil also makes it much easier for players with good aim to target specific body parts and shoot around the body armor. The Sig doesn't have nearly the same accuracy, but it uses its own unique ammo that's more powerful than 9x19 Parabellum and also fires at a faster 770 RPM. The Sig is incredibly good at hipfire and chaotic indoor gunfights, so much so that it almost makes the Vepr shotgun redundant. The Sig is also a high-level unlock, whereas the Vityaz is available pretty much at the start of the game. In my experience, the Sig is better as a secondary to a longer range weapon, like a sniper rifle or bipod weapon, whereas the Vityaz is better as a primary weapon in loadouts where you don't have another weapon that's effective against infantry at longer ranges, such as your RPG loadout or a high-mobility assault loadout. Although because they're both such great weapons, either of them would be able to cover both roles pretty well if you want to grind out only one, so no need to stress here over choosing wrong. Besides the Sig and Vityaz, there are also two other lighter SMGs, and this is where we start to see a huge downgrade and they really start to feel like secondary weapons. The Glauberyt and DMG 9mm are even lighter at only 2 weight slots, but they're much more limited in what they can do. I'm gonna put them both in the B tier. I think they're both decent weapons, but should only be used as secondary weapons. They derive most of their value from the fact that the Vityaz and Sig won't fit into some loadouts as secondaries. When it comes to the difference between them, it's a similar situation as last time. The Glauberyt has more range and the DMG has more firepower. The Glauberyt fires 9x18 Makarov at 650 RPM, which is just piss poor firepower compared to almost any weapon. So you'll have to make use of the fast handling or have some other kind of advantage over the enemy if you want to win the gunfight. Accuracy is not particularly great either, but it is actually the best you can get for a 2-slot weapon since the DMG is worse. It comes with a 15-round magazine as well, which is a serious and awkward limitation that you will have to deal with until you unlock the 25-round mag, which makes the weapon much more usable. The DMG 9mm fires the same 9x19 Parabellum rounds as the Vityaz, but at a higher 800 RPM. So in terms of raw firepower, it's not that bad, but it's got recoil that goes everywhere. It's not just high, it's inconsistent too, so you'll probably have a hard time getting the minimum time to kill unless you're close enough to cough in the enemy's face. The recoil also makes it practically impossible to aim for specific body parts in order to work around armor, so you'll probably be doing 2 damage more frequently than you prefer. The DMG also comes with a 25-round mag, which is barely enough for the Glauberyt and definitely not enough for the DMG and its 800 RPM plus poor accuracy. You will be reloading after every kill and sometimes before the kill, in which case you die. You do have the option to run a drum mag, but that will nuke your ADS time. The DMG also has a unique limitation of first requiring a standard or marksman barrel before it can equip a foregrip, because otherwise there is nowhere to mount it. Which is annoying because you probably want to use the compact barrel since you'll mostly be using this weapon at close range. Also, if you run a longer barrel, a foregrip, and a drum mag, you chip away a big portion of the ADS time advantage that the DMG has over bigger guns. Another tier down in terms of weight, we have the pistols, which also fire the same pistol ammo types as the SMGs, but at a much slower rate of fire of course, and also with far worse accuracy, at least in practice, because when you shoot them, they have a lot of visual recoil that messes with the sights. For most people, these are mostly used as placeholders in their loadouts, and they barely ever actually draw these weapons and fight with them anyways. The trade-offs between them is pretty simple. The Glock is the lightest but also the weakest. It takes up 0 weight slots at all. If you have one more weight slot to spare in your loadout before going down to the next mobility tier, there's actually no reason not to run the Ragun or Lebedev instead because they are just better. The Ragun fires the same ammo but in 3-round bursts. It's got a burst delay, but its overall rate of fire is still much faster than the Glock. The Lebedev is still semi-auto, but it fires the stronger 9x18 Makarov ammo used by the Glauberyt. I'm gonna put the Glock in the C tier because it's a terrible weapon that you ideally never want to draw out, although that's probably by design. As a weapon slot placeholder that doesn't add any weight to the loadout, the Glock is irreplaceable anyways because it has no alternative. So I'm always gonna have Glocks in my loadouts just to minimize weight, but that doesn't mean I ever look forward to using the pistol itself. In fact, if there was ever a way to run no secondary at all that comes with even some tiny other benefit, I would drop the Glock from all of my loadouts. As for the Ragun and Lebedev, I'm gonna put the Lebedev in the C tier and the Ragun in the B tier. Both of these offer higher firepower than the Glock, but between them, the Ragun has better firepower, which makes it the one that's most able to compete with primary weapons. The Lebedev has higher damage per magazine and appears to have slightly better range, but pistols are most important for situations where the threat is too close by for you to just jump behind cover, which is mostly going to happen at very close range where the Ragun will serve you better. All we have left now are sniper rifles, shotguns, and launchers. Starting with the sniper rifles, I'm going to put both the G29 and Tochnost in the A tier because they're both excellent weapons. Both of these are single action sniper rifles capable of one-shot kills to the head and to the body as well within a very short range if you run a compact barrel. The difference between them is that the G29 has higher base muzzle velocity and can one-shot kill to the body up to a longer distance when using the compact barrel. On the other hand, the Tochnost has a much faster rate of fire and takes up one less weight slot. The trade-offs on both sides do have value, and the one you should use depends on your preference as a sniper. G29 versus Tochnost is a topic that definitely deserves its own video. The third sniper rifle is the M200, and this is a completely different beast. The M200 one-shot kills to anywhere in the body at any range. I have never gotten a white hit marker with the M200. It's always either a miss or a kill marker straight away. I've even gotten enemy hit 100 with wallbangs. The downside with the M200 is, of course, literally everything else. It takes up 9 weight slots, which makes it the heaviest weapon in the game. In its default configuration, it also has the slowest ADS time in the game, if not the slowest ADS time in FPS history. You really do have to wait until tomorrow to aim down sights with this one. There are 2 things you can do to mitigate this. You can remove the bipod using the backpack menu just like for the SA-80, and you can also put on the MNL2G laser light combo, but it first requires you to equip the tactical handguard in the personal tab because the default handguard has no mounting rails. The idea of being able to one-shot in any part of the body at any range sounds insane, which is why I'm quite impressed that the M200 doesn't feel overpowered at all. The ADS time is slow enough to the point where you pretty much have to aim down sights first and wait for targets to walk into your line of sight, which is a very passive tactic that will not work in most gunfights, and in general also leads to a lot of downtime in your gameplay. This is all bad enough that if I were judging the M200 purely based on its usefulness against infantry, it would definitely be no higher than B tier. But I'm going to put the M200 in the A tier. This is because the M200 is good for one other thing, and that is blinding armored vehicles. The M200 does high damage to all vehicles, aircraft, and vehicle components that can take damage from bullets. But most importantly, it can drop any vehicle optic from 100% to 0 in one shot. Blinding tanks by shooting out their optics is a very unreliable tactic with any other weapon because it takes too many shots before you really start to disrupt the tank's vision, which gives the tank a lot of time to recognize you and do something about you. value. The M200 zeroes any vehicle optic on the first shot, which makes this tactic actually practical for disrupting tanks, or even killing tanks if you can get your squad mates to unload RPGs after you blind the tank. Now onto the shotguns. I know that out of the two shotguns, one of them, some people in the community have very strong opinions about it, so why don't we start there and talk about the MCS. For a pump-action shotgun in a first-person shooter, the MCS one-shots enemies very reliably and up to a very long distance. It one-shots people across rooms, and it one-shots people even across streets too. In fact, you can roam around in most parts of any map without having to expose yourself to areas that are open enough for the MCS to be unusable. This makes it a valid primary weapon that can actually win gunfights on most parts of the map, and not just something that's only usable indoors or at choke points and has to be paired with a longer range weapon that you can switch to when you're crossing open areas. The MCS has enough range to take care of itself. You can run a Glock in the second slot and never pull it out, and run around the map with just the MCS and still not feel like you're fighting with one hand tied back. This sets the scene for the MCS to be extremely powerful, because within its effective range, it's not just effective, it's a one-shot kill. And it's not like there's even any large trade-off for this. It's not particularly slow in terms of ADS time or sprint out time. It's 5 weight slots, which is not particularly heavy for something that can function as a sole primary weapon. In fact, you can run full armor and still retain medium mobility. It's not particularly vulnerable to armor either. I run full armor in almost all of my loadouts, and I still get one shot by this weapon all the time. I'm going to put the MCS in the S tier for its current state, and I say current state because it's likely to change in the next round of rebalancing. The other shotgun in the game is the Vepr, and it is nowhere near as powerful as the MCS despite being semi-auto. Its one-shot kill range is much shorter. It can only one-shot targets across small rooms and basically never across streets. So if you want to keep most of your potential targets inside the Vepr's effective range, you will have to pick your routes much more carefully than you do with the MCS when you're moving around the map. It does have a faster rate of fire, so if you need to take more shots, you can just take them, but whenever you need to take multiple shots to kill, the time to kill becomes uncompetitive against regular guns, and it's also less consistent on account of it being a shotgun and having that random pellet spread. This is why I would say that unlike the MCS, the Vepr cannot really stand alone as a primary weapon, and you will need to have a longer range weapon in your loadout when you cross open areas, or else you'll be very limited in where on the map you can actually go without being super exposed to enemies way outside of your weapon's effective range. Unfortunately, as a secondary weapon, the Vepr is still not that good. It takes up 4 weight slots, which is a lot for something that I would say is mostly useful as a secondary. If you're not encountering most of your targets inside the one-shot kill range, you're better off running a Sig because in every other way it's just better. And it also takes up less weight. I'm going to put the Vepr in the C tier. All we have left now are launchers. Starting with the RPG, I'm going to put this in the A tier. Its main purpose is to counter vehicles, and it is reasonably effective at that, but you should have reasonable expectations. Land drones are pretty vulnerable to RPGs, but if you're fighting an IFV or tank by yourself, it's almost impossible to kill it with your RPG alone before it kills you or runs away. You'll need to spend some points on a cruise missile or anti-tank suicide drone to do some extra damage before or after hammering the vehicle with RPGs, or you'll need teammates to contribute damage in some way, otherwise it'll almost certainly kill you or run away before you can blow it up, because it simply takes too much time to dish out that much damage with an RPG alone. Almost any vehicle operator is going to see it coming and respond accordingly. I can certainly make an entire video about RPG tips and tactics and how to counter vehicles in general, but since this isn't that video, I'll save it for the future and not make this video any longer than it already probably will be. The other launcher is the PPZR Piorun, and this one is not nearly as relevant or useful as the RPG. In fact, most of you have probably forgotten that this thing exists if you even knew in the first place. So for your information, the Piorun is a lock-on launcher launcher that can lock onto any aircraft, and it's most useful against Barracudas, Reapers, and the helicopter drone. That's because flying eyes can be easily shot down using guns, and the OTV and UCAS cannot be destroyed at all. They have no hitbox, so you'll just have to wait for them to expire. The Piorun kills Barracudas and Reapers in one shot, and the helicopter drone in 2 shots if you follow up with a few bullets. It does just under 50 damage to it. I'm going to put the Piorun in the C tier. The biggest problem with the Piorun is that it's too difficult to get line of sight on the aircraft you want to shoot down. Reapers and Barracudas fly up in the air, and out of the 5 maps currently in the game, 3 of them have lots of tall buildings, and another has lots of tall trees. So even though it's a one-shot kill, finding a chance to take the shot is often quite difficult and also takes a lot of time. You're most likely not carrying the Piorun at all times as a secondary, so you'll have to die, respawn with the Piorun, and then run towards a spot where you can actually see the aircraft you want to shoot down and take the shot. This process can easily take a bit of time, and considering that the Barracuda and Reaper only last for a fixed amount of time in the sky, most of the time it's better to just wait them out. The heli drone presents similar challenges. If anything, it's much worse because it doesn't have a fixed flight path. The pilot can fly it anywhere they want, so it's even harder to get line of sight on it, and when you do see it, you gotta remember that it can also shoot back at you. Also, if the heli drone is flying low enough for you to actually hit it with an RPG, that's actually a much better weapon to use because it does way more damage to it. For most of the time I've spent playing the game, I've actually had a Piorun loadout that I could respawn with in case there were too many Barracudas or Reapers on the map at once, or if there was a really good heli pilot that I had to take down. This was a loadout for a rare contingency in the first place, and I still used it far less than I expected. The wider context of this game just doesn't lend much room for an anti-air launcher to be all that useful. We are now at the end of the video, and this is the full tier list that we ended up with. Let me know how much of it you actually agree with in the comments if you like. You may notice that the D tier is completely empty. I was going to put some of the C tier guns in there, but then I spent some more time using them and I realized that none of them really deserve it. Nevertheless, I still left the D tier box on the screen because it actually helps nail home a point, and that is that World War III's guns are actually pretty well balanced. Not only is there nothing in the D tier, but there's also only a few guns in the C tier, which is where I really put everything that I think deserves even a small buff. Everything B tier and above is completely fine. Nothing in the S tier is even overpowered besides maybe the MCS, which has already been addressed in the Season 1 update, which came out while I was editing this video. Overall, what differentiates the B, A, and S tiers is really just me nitpicking over what I think the constraints of this game favor the most. People who aren't interested in the tiny differences can even argue that the meta can barely form a hierarchy at all, and we just have a bunch of pretty well balanced guns with a select few that need a tiny bit of extra work. It's even more impressive when you consider that they managed to balance things while also keeping the guns meaningfully different from each other. I don't know about you, but I've played a lot of FPS games that either have a consolidated meta dominated by a few top guns, or a diluted meta where the guns are technically balanced, but that's because they're all basically the same gun with a different look and there's no diversity in the gameplay. World War III has managed to strike true on both balance and diversity, which is one of the reasons why I like this game. If only I could say the same thing about the vehicles. If you're watching this far into the future, please read my pinned comment down below because that's where I will address any game updates that could invalidate what I said in this video. I expect this video to age fairly well, which is why I was okay with making it in the first place, despite the huge amount of work that I knew it was going to take, and I expect it to age well because, like I said, I think the meta is pretty well put together, and I see no reason why the devs would want to mess with it unnecessarily. If If anything is going to shake it up, it's going to be new content, which I can just cover in new videos. We've already got 2 new guns in Season 1, but they don't really do much. The K2C1 is actually kind of pointless when you take a closer look, and the QBZ is decent, but it's literally just another 5.56 AR performance-wise, middle ground between the M416 and MSBS-K to be precise. There's nothing spectacular about it. I will cover each of them in their own video, so subscribe if you want to see that. I was not able to include them in this video because it already pretty much took shape by the time they came out, or at least the skeleton of the video did, and it just shows how time consuming and cumbersome it was to put together such a long video. New information kept showing up during the production process, and the game even received an update. I had a couple reasons why I wanted to keep everything together in one video instead of breaking it up into a bunch of shorter videos, but looking back I realized that there's way more reasons why I should have broken it all up, and that's why everybody else makes shorter videos. I don't think I'll ever embark on such a large project again, at least not until my production and editing skills have gotten much better, but I hope I made this one somewhat worth your time. Please leave a like on the video if you did, and also leave a comment and tell you how you feel about the video. I imagine very few people would actually watch this far in, so if you did, then your feedback will be especially valuable. Thanks for watching.